Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
All right, so today I'm here with the Westmorelands, and I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves and then tell us a little bit about their family and their ranch.
Well, first of all, Molly, thank you for having us on your podcast. It's a privilege to talk to you with my family today. We're a gang of 5 Longhorns. It's named after the 5 of us. I'm Brad Westmoreland. This is my wife, Ann, behind me. My oldest daughter, Camilla, next daughter, Andalyn, and then Evie on the end. You'll get to hear a lot from them, some more than others. One of them isn't much of a talker.
I feel
you'll hear from everybody. We've been raising cattle in my family in Texas for 6 generations. Longhorns are a relatively new breed to us, but I'll explain what I mean by that later on. We're really, really proud of our girls. This is a family operation. We started this particular enterprise primarily for our girls, and they work as hard or harder than Ann and I do at times in this operation. Ann has homeschooled our girls from the get-go, and we're very, very proud of the things they've already accomplished. And we're excited to talk about what they plan on accomplishing with this Longhorn business of ours.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add, girls?
Yeah, and introduce yourself, girls.
I'm Ann, and I'm just so blessed to get to be with my sweet girls. I'm just such a blessed mama, and I just love being with my family, and I love doing stuff with our church.
Hi, I'm Evie. I'm 13 years old, and along with ranching, I'm also a dancer. I've been dancing my whole life, and some of my favorite things to do are, of course, ranching and shopping and playing with my animals and doing anything with my church.
I'm Andalyn. I'm 15 and I'm a freshman in college. Hi everyone, I'm Camilla. I'm 18. I'm a sophomore in college, and some of my hobbies include anything with our church, ranching, anything outdoors, and I also really like classic vehicles. So, yeah.
And when Evie says she likes shopping, she was not kidding.
Oh, yeah.
You go for it, Evie. Do it while you can.
Yeah.
All right. So the question we usually start by asking everyone is a pretty simple one, but it leads to a lot of fun and interesting answers. And so that is, why Longhorns?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. I've raised cattle my whole life, but the cow that has always stuck out in my mind, probably every rancher has a favorite cow or bull that they can think of, and I'm no exception. When I was 11 years old, I purchased for $50 a half crossbred Longhorn. She was half Longhorn, half Charolais, and bottle fed her as a calf. Named her Sarah because I got her during the Sarajevo Olympics that was going on that winter. And Sarah lived to be 21 years old and had 20 calves. Wow. And so I just fell in love with her from the get-go. And her longevity and her ability to raise a calf is certainly a tribute to her Longhorn blood more than the Charolais, I think. The other reason I really like Longhorns, and we decided to kind of focus on that breed for now, is because of our family history. Do you want to know anything else about that?
Yeah. So obviously when I met you for your website, you filled me in a little bit, but I think our listeners would love to hear kind of everything that you told me, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it as well. So
okay, well thanks. Talking about my family is nothing I'm ever shy to do. So after the Civil War, Longhorns were plentiful in Texas. The men had been off fighting the war and leaving their ranches behind, and the Longhorn cattle had kind of bred and were everywhere. So cattle were plentiful in Texas. But because of the war effort, it was in really short supply. north of Texas and west of Texas. And so the girl's great grandfather was named Andreas Paulnack Sr. He had 6 boys, one of the younger boys was my great grandfather, their great Andy Paulnack. And what they did, they had a ranch in Scurry County, Texas, specifically the town of Snyder. And that's located, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically West Texas, kind of the central part of West Texas. And Snyder was known for being the focal point of the McKenzie Trail, the cattle drive trail named the McKenzie. And so he raised Longhorns, and he and his boys twice a year would take the Longhorns on that trail, and then they would head due east toward Fort Worth. In the process, they'd leave the McKenzie, cut across country. Of course, everything was open range back then, go across the Western Trail, and ultimately get to the stockyards in Fort Worth, where they would sell cattle. My family's never liked to leave Texas. They'd sell their cattle in Fort Worth, and then they would head with other herds on the Chisholm Trail north. And my dad, when he was a young boy, can remember his grandfather, who was Andy, talking about those cattle drives and how fun it was most of the time. Probably in hindsight, it was fun. The process in our family was you could start driving cattle on the trails when you were 12, but you couldn't ride a horse on the trails until you were 16. And so my dad talks about his grandfather, Andy, telling him how excited he was to turn 16 because he could finally ride a horse and he wouldn't have to walk the 460-mile round trip. And so it would take him about 6 weeks or so to make that trip twice a year. And he was really excited when he turned 16, thinking, I finally get to be on a horse, until he realized, as the youngest cowboy in the outfit, he had to ride drag. And so he dust for the first 230 miles to Fort Worth. But, you know, in this enterprise, raising Longhorns, I hope it doesn't sound corny, but knowing our family's history, you know, going back generations in Texas, we kind of feel like we're honoring that history and the legacy that they helped build, frankly, in the Old West, by, you know, the labor that we have today. So it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. That's definitely, I'm sure, a great tribute what you all are trying to build now. So that's great.
Those are my reasons. The girls have other reasons for why they particularly like raising Longhorns, if you don't mind them telling you.
No, let's hear them.
So I'll start. One of my main reasons is we all adore animals of pretty much any kind. And so knowing that our Longhorns and our cattle were going to be pretty much pets and be sold through private treaty was kind of a good addition. I think it gives us some peace of mind knowing that these animals we, you know, contribute so much time to, they're going to be pets in someone's backyard or at their ranch, which was very cool to me. So Evie, do you have anything you want to add?
I feel like another reason why we chose Longhorns is because of all the variation in them, like whether it be their color or their pattern or their personality, they all look so different. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So now, do you like shopping for Longhorns as much as you like shopping for clothes?
Oh, yeah.
It does.
Nice.
I would say that shopping for Longhorns can be a little more expensive, but with shopping habits, not so much. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do either of the other two of you want to talk about what you enjoy or no?
I just agree with everything they all said. Yeah, I think they covered it all.
And you've probably heard all you're going to hear from Andy in the back.
Yeah, she's a little more shy.
It's good. I'm the same. It takes a lot for me to do these podcasts and different things like that. So why don't you, now that we kind of know your history and your family's history and also what you enjoy, go ahead and tell us a little bit about when you decided to, you know, start your own herd, how you got started, maybe the people that helped you along the way, kind of how you found your first ones. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Those are good questions. Well, as I mentioned, I've been involved in the cattle business forever. Everybody in my family has at one time or another on both sides of the family. And so when our girls started getting older, of course, they helped out with our crossbred operation when they were much younger. But when they started getting older and wanted their own ownership interest in the cattle, Ann and I talked with them and talked with each other. And, we tried to decide, do we want to just kind of get them more involved in an ownership level with the animals we already have, which had kind of developed into a crossbred Simmental Angus herd over the years? Or do we just kind of want to start fresh and let them pick the type of cattle they're interested in? And so we started researching it together as a family years ago, frankly, trying to decide which direction we wanted to go. And when they ultimately decided they wanted Longhorns, I was thrilled because I've always wanted to focus on that breed ever since I had Sarah as a kid. It was actually Camilla who first contacted a breeder for us. She found John and Brenda Oliver with Oliver Longhorns in Malakoff. They have a hired hand website, super easy to navigate, had beautiful cattle listed. And so Camilla started communicating with John, and ultimately we went out there and spent a Saturday with him. And he drove us all around his property, spent hours with us, showing us his cattle, answering our thousands of questions. And by the time we left that day, we knew the first cattle that we wanted to buy from him. He just could not have been better to us. I mean, to all of us. And, squeezing all 5 of us in his pickup and spending the day with us was asking a lot. And, frankly, I think he and Brenda sold us some cattle that they might not have otherwise wanted to sell, because we got some great animals from them. Cow-calf pairs, young. There's 2, especially Oversweet and Tibby Temp are their names that, frankly, I'd pit against any cow in the breed. They're awesome. And, from there, we found other breeders, and we've selectively purchased foundation animals to start this herd out. And we've got a good young bull named Taxi that we're very excited about, that we purchased from Daryl Dickinson. One thing I was surprised about, Molly, when we really started researching Longhorns is I've just assumed that they were primarily located in Texas, and that shows my ignorance. I mean, Daryl with Dickinson, Cattle Company is in Ohio. I mean, he's one of the best breeders in the breed, if not the best. And so he's really helped us out with some good animals as well.
Good. So Camilla, when you found John and Brenda online, tell me a little bit about your search process. Did you start on social media? Did you start on Google? Kind of how did you come across them?
Yeah, so I actually just started out on Google, just doing a Google search for Longhorn breeders in our area, and they came up. And so I started looking at some of their cattle, and actually what caught my eye was a little bull calf originally. And so that's what we communicated about back and forth. And then I just kind of didn't think anything of it. And then, we started talking about starting our own cattle business. And so with Longhorns, and so, 2 or 3 years later, all of a sudden, now they're one of our main people we're buying cattle from, which was just a pretty cool full circle type thing. And they're just awesome. I can't really talk enough good about those people. So, yeah.
So when you went there the first time, was that kind of your first live experience with Longhorns and being in a pasture and kind of being around them for you girls?
It was for me, and
Yes,
I assume,
yeah, pretty much, yes.
Okay. So what were your first thoughts? What do you think?
This is it.
I loved
Honestly,
it. Yeah.
this is where we need to be. This is what we should be doing, and now it is. And so it was pretty cool.
It was kind of love at first sight for all of us. Yeah,
that's awesome.
They're great animals.
Yeah.
So now that you have some of your own, what is your favorite part?
I'll jump in and start out. I'm sure my favorite parts are different from the girls, but my answer is real simple. And so they could answer it better than I can, but I love everything about Longhorns. I was thinking about it, aside from Scottish Highlands, I think that's how you pronounce it, the real shaggy ones.
Yep.
Over the years, I've owned or been around just about every breed of cattle that you can imagine. And there is nothing like a Texas Longhorn. I love absolutely everything about the breed. And so they can probably tell you more specifics than I can, because there's not a thing I don't like.
My favorite part is actually just watching him with them and seeing how happy he is. We've been married 25 years, and ever since I met him, I knew God had made him to work with cows. It's just, he has a gift with him. He's just a natural. And so it's really, really a blessing to watch him and see how happy they make him.
Thanks,
It's really, that's my favorite part.
My favorite part, like my dad said, is also everything. But to be more specific, I really like petting them and feeding them and getting to see their personalities.
Do you name them based off their personalities, or do you name them right away when they're born?
It takes me a while to name them. I like to see how they act and really think about their color and everything.
Yeah. It's a process.
It's a process.
I think my favorite thing about our Longhorns is kind of like what Evie said. They're seeing their personalities. But I like to see their personalities in kind of a different way. I think it's fun to take photos of them. And I can't remember who told me this, but someone said that Longhorns are always going to want to pose for the camera. And I was like, oh, that's so silly. That's not true. And then as we've been, spending time with our own, it's proven true. They never take a bad photo. So it's pretty awesome.
You might get some comments on our podcast about that, because I feel like there's definitely people that agree with you. They feel the same way you do, but then there's people that swear they can't get a good photo for the life of them. They won't raise their head, they won't put their leg back. So if you're like the Longhorn photo whisperer, there might be a future for you in that.
Yeah, they're fun.
They
for
are
sure.
fun. Yeah, absolutely.
And hearing Evie talk about petting them, that's one thing that we think makes us stand out a little bit. We've been very careful to pick ones that are really gentle. And so with our girls working around them as much as Ann and I do, Longhorns have Longhorns. And so it's important that they have a great temperament, and you can pet and feed all of our cattle, which is pretty nice.
Good. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of your goals for the future and kind of your plans that way.
Okay. Girls, you want to start out?
So we have some big plans for our Longhorn business, specifically my sisters and me. If we had to kind of sum up kind of our future for the business, we think we could kind of sum it up in one word, which is up. We want to take our small business and turn it one of these days into literally an enterprise. Our parents have always told us, if you can find something you enjoy and make a living out of it, why wouldn't you do that? And that's kind of how we view, the position we're in with our Longhorn business. Me specifically, I have an interest in journalism. And so one of these days, my goal is to start our own podcast for Gang of Five Longhorns and talk about the ranch life and things like that. And also author a book about, our cattle company. And then Evie, as you know.
As I mentioned, I like shopping and fashion. So kind of like the King Ranch and the Kimes Ranch, how they have like clothing stores and stuff too. We kind of wanted to do that as well in the future.
Yeah, but we never want to lose kind of that small business feel, because that's who we are first and foremost. This is supposed to be fun. And
it's about the Longhorns too.
Right.
So a clothing line would be super awesome.
Right.
But it's ultimately about the Longhorns.
Yeah. And having fun with it and not focusing entirely on business, because that's not what it's about for us. We enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Molly, if you don't mind, let me say something real quick. Of course, being a dad, there's no book on how to do it, right? There's no reliable book except the Bible on how to do it. And so, as the girls were younger, I would hear them talk about goals that they had, and I would kind of, chuckle to myself, encourage them, but kind of, to myself, so, okay, whatever. One thing I've learned over the years is when these girls set a goal, you might as well just write it down, because they're going to work to meet it. The Bible says to study to show yourself approved, and we're all Christians, and we know that applies to spiritual things, but we really believe it applies to your efforts in other areas as well. And for me, I understand that we're relatively new to the Longhorn business. We don't pretend to know it all. And there's, breeders that know a whole lot more than we do, but we're all really good studies. And, Camilla's 18. She didn't brag on herself too much, but she's a college sophomore at 18. Andelin's 15, a college freshman. Evie's 13, and what she didn't tell you is she's already a senior in high school. She'll graduate this coming year and start college at 14. And so when they talk about having big goals, they'll meet them. For me, I've been blessed to have success already in my life. I just want this to be a success for them. But one thing I think that we should always do as breeders of purebred animals is seek to improve the breed. That's something that Daryl Dickinson has certainly done. And that's the kind of footsteps I'd like to walk in, regardless of how big our operation should get one of these days. I want us to be known for people that are improving the Longhorn breed to the extent that we can.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure in 5, 10, however many years you set in your plan, I'm sure we'll be hearing about it, and we'll support you in however we can, especially with the clothing. I feel you on that. Okay, so the next question is, we talked a lot about the Olivers and we talked about Mr. Dickinson. Is there anyone else that you kind of want to give credit to for helping you get started?
I would. Ross Ohlendorf with Rocking O Longhorns in Lockhart. I think primarily in Lockhart. They've got several different locations, but Ross has been great. He's one of the individuals that we purchase cattle from and hope to purchase more in the future because he's got a really impressive herd. But he's been a good friend to me. He's been extremely patient, answered lots of my questions and the girls' questions that they've sent through me to him. And I just can't say enough about what a fine man he is, and a good family man as well. And so, the Olivers and Daryl and Ross have really been great. They've helped us a lot.
So girls, have you met anyone else of your similar ages that you've been able to kind of get advice from or anything?
Yeah, so actually this goes back to the Olivers again, but John Oliver has some awesome grandchildren.
Yes.
And every time we've come to pick up a cow or whatever from his ranch, they're always there. Their names are Lucan, Tucker, and Wiley.
We love talking with them.
They're awesome. And
they do show, and they're just so great.
Yeah, and so it's nice to be able to talk to, kids our age or around our age and get to hear their opinions on things and see them work with their cows. And they're pretty awesome. And
Lucan is just about the cutest little boy I've
ever
seen.
Oh my goodness. He is precious.
So we actually named one of our bulls that we got from John after Lucan recently. So
Cool.
Yeah.
So when you see them, when you said they're active in the show circuit, is that anything that you girls might try, or are you kind of going to go a different path?
Hopefully show for some of our calves. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Evie has a heifer calf right now named Over the Moon, who is just gorgeous. She's one of Oversweet's calves. And so I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Evie's planning on showing her in the near future once we get her weaned and halter broken. So that'll be fun to see.
Yeah.
Oversweet, who we purchased from John and Brenda, is a 2-time world champion female, and she's just awesome. And she does have this calf that we have high hopes for.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk a little bit about technology, your website. So what made you choose Hired Hand to start your website?
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, for me, I don't have a lot of time. I'm busy like most folks, and I know very little about computers and technology. If I can turn one on in the morning, I'm doing pretty good. And so when we started researching Longhorns, not every website that we saw, but probably 99% of the websites that we've liked have been Hired Hand websites, and they're all easy to navigate. They're all different. And so I could tell that your design team is really talented. And so for me, it was a no-brainer to go with Hired Hand, because you have such a turnkey operation. And, for someone that knows very little about technology, I've had my hand held by you guys the whole way, and it's been great. No worries.
And I just want to expound on that, because as we already know, Evie and I, especially Evie, like to do a lot of online shopping. I mean, it's no secret. And what we found through all this diligent research is the website can kind of make or break the company. And so, you know, if you find a website and it isn't designed very well, or it's hard to navigate, well, we probably won't want to shop there, especially since we haven't, you know, met the people and we don't know them. And so again, what y'all are doing is creating, you know, excellent websites that really give a good impression on potential buyers. And so that's what another reason we chose Hired Hand.
It makes a difference.
It does. Yeah.
Awesome. So at the time that we're recording this podcast, your website is still in development. So talk to us a little bit about what your goals are for your specific site, kind of how you're going to try to make yourself a little bit different, stand out. Let's review that a little bit.
I'll jump in here if you don't mind, and y'all comment as you want to. You know, I think our name, Gang of Five Longhorns, is kind of unique, and certainly it's a name, a platform you can do a lot of neat things with. Our brand that we have for our Longhorn cattle is also pretty unique and goes along with our ranch name. And so we've wanted a website that kind of highlights the interesting parts of our name and our brand, and the history that our family has. I mean, obviously I don't live in the Old West and probably wouldn't have lasted very long if I did, but you know, it's neat to say I have ancestors that really literally blaze the trails that we talk about today and that we see movies made about today. And so we wanted a website that kind of highlights that as well. And I mean, we've studied for a long time. We've mentioned that a few times already, and it hasn't been an easy road to get to where we're at. We've had a big learning curve to overcome. And so one page that we've talked about having on our website that I've mentioned to you guys is kind of a link to those businesses and individuals that have helped us along the way, so that maybe other people who might be new to the industry and come across our website won't have to do quite as much work as we did. They can kind of have a central location for information, to find the types of resources that we've had to search to find. And then, you know, obviously we want to highlight our cattle. That's the main reason of having the website. And so we're interested in marketing our cattle through the good photographs that you've advised us to obtain and things of that nature. But I think we want the visitors to our site to learn about us as breeders too, and to know that they're getting cattle from people that they can trust. Although I've got to tell you, I've not met a Longhorn breeder that I don't trust. It seems to be a really great community. But, you know, I think that our situation is unique because frankly, our girls, as I mentioned, they're kind of ramrodding this whole outfit and have done a really good job. And we'd like to highlight that on our website as well. I know a lot about cattle, but Longhorns are something that we've learned together, and we want people to know that. So if they have kids that are interested in getting involved in the breed, they can see that it's a good selection.
You girls have anything to add?
I think you covered everything.
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered everything for that.
Cool.
So have either of you been on any of the calls with Angie or involved in the process, or do you kind of meet as a family and then one of you passes the information on? How are you handling that part?
Yeah, that's typically how we do it. Our dad does most of the emailing and things, but it's always we always consult each other, you know, website colors, or what are we thinking for this? What are we thinking for that? We've actually started designing some of our own merchandise already, and that was a fun process of just comparing all kind of different ideas and designs. And so it's definitely a team effort, everything is, but he kind of heads the operation as far as communication.
Perfect.
Camilla mentioned something about merchandise. You know, one thing I've learned from Daryl is marketing. You know, with commercial breeds, you know, more domestic breeds and Longhorns, you know, Angus, Simmental, all the stuff I've been involved in my whole life, you don't really have to market those. I mean, you raise them, you raise good cattle, and you take them to the sale, you know, and you know where they're going to end up most of the time. And so it's focused on beef. But, you know, for Longhorns, at least the type we're raising, we don't want to just take them to the sale for beef. Obviously, there's a great market out there for Longhorn beef. But we're more angled toward, you know, private treaty, as the girls mentioned. And so, you know, they've done a great job in designing a lot of our merchandising and things of that nature that we're going to use to help us market the cattle. So it's been fun doing that with them.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to see some of the stuff you come up with.
Yeah.
We'll send you some.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So before we ask our question that we usually close with, is there anything else that you all want to let the listeners know about yourselves, your program, anything that you can share?
Yeah, I've thought about kind of how we're trying to set ourselves apart from everybody else. And it's been interesting. I've mentioned some great breeders already that we know personally, and there's a lot of other great breeders out there for sure. But there's some that don't have what we're looking for. It seems to, man, we've attended lots of sales and auctions. We've looked at lots of websites. We've studied lots of material that's available. And it seems that it's the exception to the rule to find someone that consistently breeds Longhorn cattle that I think have the 4 characteristics that at least we want in our cattle. And that's, good horn, obviously, body conformation, temperament is super important, and color. I mean, we've seen cattle that are wonderful show cattle, but they haven't kept up with the modern horn genetics that's available now through AI and other types of breeding. We've been to auctions where you've got cattle with great horns, but they're mean as a hornet, and you never want your kids around them because you can trust them. And then, those cattle have sold for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you kind of scratch your head about how'd that cow not get cold years ago. And then we've seen beautiful herds of cattle that are just almost completely white, or they might have a few spots. And yet, as I think Evie mentioned earlier, the variety that you get with Longhorns is one of the things that makes them so wonderful. And so we kind of want to market ourselves, even though we're relatively small right now, as breeders that are not going to market a cow that doesn't check those 4 boxes: great temperament, good horn, good conformation, and color. So
Nice. Do you have anything to add?
I would just say, and I think with the foundation cows that we selected, I think we're really going to be able to achieve those goals that my dad laid out.
Yeah, we've been careful.
Yeah. So it's pretty exciting for sure.
Anything else that you guys want to share today?
No.
We really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Of course. Let's close with our last question then. So you can only pick one, or maybe we should let each of you pick one. That might be more fair. But what's your favorite hired hand site that you found aside from your own?
Okay. You want to start?
Yes.
Okay.
I do know my favorite. I have to explain it though. My favorite is the Carolina Cartel Longhorns. They're Easterners. We won't hold that against them. But they certainly have a lot to be proud of, and wonderful bull that they're known for, cowboy catch-it checks. And then, they've got a beautiful website. I like the design. It's got a nice Western theme to it. It goes along with their name very well. And that's my personal favorite.
All right. So I'm going to put you on the spot now, though. So out of, once you get into the cartel website, who's your favorite ranch?
That was a tough. Since I don't know them well, I better not pick one of the 3.
Fair enough.
Yeah, from what I have viewed of their cattle, they all have a lot to be proud of. So, yeah, an awesome website.
My favorite is the Shepherd Ranch Cattle Company.
Okay. Why do you like that one?
I love the pictures, and I just love the family. They're just some very dear friends of ours. We just really love them.
They go to church with us.
Yeah.
We're really close with them.
Yes.
So they had an in on being picked for this question.
I think mine, and again, I'm pretty biased, but I think is Oliver Longhorns. I think their website's very easy to navigate, and I think they do a good job of highlighting their cattle and not getting too wrapped up in, the frizz and frill of it all, which I think some websites do. So
it's kept up to date really well too.
Yeah.
If you click on one of their animals that they have for sale, you can trust it's actually for sale.
Right.
And that it hasn't, been sold a year ago.
And they have
updated.
Lots of photos, which I think really
Yeah,
helps
that's
to view
important.
the cattle and see what you're getting into. So,
You bet.
My favorite is the same as my dad's, the Carolina Cartel.
It's
that
pretty
one's so
awesome.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
cool.
Now, do you have a favorite one within it or no?
No.
Just the overall. All right.
I
None,
like
none of you are gonna pick. I get it. I get it. Do you have a favorite one at all?
Probably the same one as Camilla.
Yeah, all over Longhorns.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of cool websites.
Yes.
There's
But you
so
put us on the
many.
spot for one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can only pick one. That's the rule. That's why it's hard to pick. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to
Amen.
go
Thank
ahead and once your site's live, when the podcast comes out, we'll link it in the show notes. Girls, if you want us to link to any social media or anything like that, go ahead and let me know too, and we can include that. But yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much.
us.
You.